Good morning, Jean-Nicolas.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
It seems that we have some confusion. I apologize about the timing of the workshop. We're supposed to start now at 10, right?
Either way, that's what I thought, and I guess that's what the people thought too. On the website,
Yeah,
it's written 10,
10.
and on the channels, it's written 10:30. But
Yeah, I think that was a typing mistake, so I apologize about that. So good morning, everyone. It is great to have you all join us for our first workshop today. Our speaker will be talking about content management systems, introducing us to SiteCore and the digital experience platforms. We are very happy to welcome you, Jean-Nicolas. Mr. Jean-Nicolas Gauthier is a web team lead at LCI Education. We kindly just want to we want to ask you to kindly please keep your mics and cameras off. Feel free to write your questions in the chat and interact with Jean-Nicolas if he has questions for you or invites you to ask your own questions. So we will be here in the background helping you moderate, and enjoy everybody, and thank you for coming. Have a wonderful workshop. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
all right, thank you, and thanks everybody that are here today. Just on that note, if you have question comments, I know it's been asked you to set it on the chat, but if it don't be shy. I'm gonna repeat myself later in the presentation, but I think it's very important that you guys are not shy and ask the question when it's needed. So let me start by sharing my screen, if I can do that somewhere. I hope you're all doing good, by the way. Share screen, and then it should be this guy. Will be better if I have my presentation right. Windows, okay, it's because I have too many windows, so it should be this guy. All right. Can you guys see my screen? I think you can.
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. All right. So yes, thank you everybody that showed up here today for the Tech Week 2021. It is my first presentation here at the Tech Week. I think it's the first anniversary or first time this event happened.
Fifth
To
anniversary.
fifth, is it the fifth one?
Yes, it's just we used to have it in Salle Jean-Paul Morin before.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So either way, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation as well. Today, I am going to talk about the content management system. Maybe most of you knows a little or a lot about that. I'm not sure. That's why we are going to tackle this first. We are then going to talk about digital experience platform, SiteCore Helix principle. We are also going to talk about our very great and loved one, Uncle Bob. So what is the agenda for today? I know we have, I think, 2 hours together. Let's try to make it relevant, and I'll try to stick to the plan. Sometimes I speak, I get into my discussion further than I should, so I'm going to try to stick to my agenda. I'm going to first introduce myself, so I think it's important for you guys to know who is talking, right? So who am I, what I do, and everything in between. I'm going to then talk about what is a CMS. I'm going to talk about digital experience. And then we're going to talk about what is a DXP, digital experience platform. And then we're going to talk about what is SiteCore. At this point, I think we should take a break before we jump into more technical the discussion. So I'm going to talk about SiteCore Helix and software architecture principles. Some of which you probably already heard of in some of your classes. If not, it's going to be something great. If you did hear of that, it's going to be a great reminder, but it's more about how it is being used in SiteCore, right? And a small discussion around SiteCore's vision or roadmap or both. And at the end, I'm going to end up with questions and discussions. Yeah, that will be it. Yeah, so before we start, I just want to mention that there's many images on my presentation that are maybe meaningless. It's because it's a template. I just reuse the image to make it cute, but don't judge me on that. Yeah, so there's some rules today. Hopefully, those rules are going to be a good fit for you guys. So, like I told you before, don't be shy. I think it's important for you guys to ask questions when needed. I want this presentation to be relevant. I want it to be interesting. And I also want it to be the less confused possible. So I know there may be a different range of people here, and actually asking questions, I know that teachers probably tell you that a lot, that it is something good to do because you're going to learn, but you also are going to make other people learns from those same questions as well. And I think that in the professional world, it's also great to have people asking questions. I see this often, like interns or junior being shy, not asking question and taking something for granted. It can be code-wise, it can be processes or whatever. The reality is maybe it's an intern that did that bit in the past. Maybe the senior was tired when he did something, some that. So asking question is going to help you with, with this actual session, but it will, I'm just gonna reiterate that it will help you in your professional journey as well. It is very important to, if you want to make things change, you have to ask question. If you want to make sure what you're doing is good or bad, you have to ask question or at least engage discussion. So that will be applied for the session today. I hope you guys are going to enjoy the session. That is my most important part. My mission for today is for you guys to enjoy. I want you guys to get involved as much as you want. I know that it is being asked for you guys to comments on the chat section for me to be aware. If I don't see those comments, I think there's some button in Teams that you can raise hands and something like that that will catch my eyes for sure. But as long as I can I see your intention, I think we'll be good. The other thing is I am a French Canadian. I speak English, but I do have an accent. And one thing I do sometimes is when I'm in the flow, I'm trying to say a sentence, but I'm using a French word, but I'm trying to use a English accent to make it look like it's an English word. It's not. You have the right to laugh at me if I do that. Yeah, it might happen. Hopefully not. And then we can connect. That's not a rules. It's just a matter of if you want to connect after, we can, totally can. All right, who am I? My name is Jean-Nicolas Gauthier. I am actually the web team lead at LCI Education. It's been 8 months, I think, or 9 months already, something like that. I am the organizer of SiteCore User Group Quebec, the organizer of SiteCore User Group Montreal. I was the speaker for the SOCCON Global 2021 as well. Oh, and I have a duplicate, so I guess I wanted to make sure you guys understand I am the web team lead at LCI Education. It is not a typo. I really wanted to reiterate that. Yeah, but my background from a technical perspective or technology-wise has been a lot with web development or CMSs and DXP. I have worked with SiteCore for a while, but I've also worked with WordPress, Drupal, Joomla. So yeah, I've been working with web development, but CMS and DXP a little bit more. I have worked as a front-end developer, integrator, backend, DevOps, and everything in between. As long as it is web development, I'm in. I'm the kind of guy that do ask a lot of questions. I'm the kind of guy that takes nothing for granted. If I see something weird, whoever did that, even if it's me, my whole me, sometimes I see my code 2 years ago and I'm questioning myself why I did this. But the important part is I really want the thing to get better. I always saw code like art. I know if I'm making noise with my cell phone. Give me a minute. Sorry, guys. It's do not disturb. Yeah, so I always see code like a form of art. So I'm always proud of what I deliver in the moment. It doesn't mean that a year later I will still be proud, but if I'm not, I'm gonna make sure I can be proud again. So yeah, that's the kind of person I am. But I am also I am just not a programmer, and I think it's important to mention it. I am a dad of two boys. I have two dogs, or kinda. They're small Chihuahua, so maybe one and a half will be more relevant here. I have a cat and a bearded dragon. I am passionate about skateboard, basketball, and snowboard. I actually gave lesson of skateboard in the past. I used to work a lot with the kids, but I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. So when did I realize I love or like programming? It's one hell of a story. I'm gonna cut it short, but I was studying science at college in the past, trying to be an engineer. Oh, I have received a message. Wow, that okay. Sorry, the message popped up. So I was studying science at college. I was trying to be an engineer, like I said. That's something I thought would be a clear path to me, right? But at the same time, I was working a lot with kids. So I was working in summer camps for like 9, 10 years, something like that. I was a basketball coach for a while too, and I was a skateboarding instructor. But at some point, so I started a bachelor in social work because I thought that was the other path that I chose from. Like I was not decided between engineering or more. Um, Oh, okay. So I was just wondering. I just see person appeared here. Oh, hello, hello, buddy. Yeah. So at this point, I realized that it wasn't made for me. But one semester away from the social work, I realized that I was not at the right place. So I started traveling, right? And I somehow, somewhere, got hooked with web development with a good friend of mine, and I quickly realized how much it was. There was this, logical thing that I loved in it. There's also you know the like whatever math or science stuff that I liked in the past, I could find this in the programming world too. The feeling of crafting art with my well indented line of codes, right? So, and the teamwork behind that. So I just realized real quick that it was meant for me, like, or maybe the other way or whatever. But it was not the engineering that I thought I would be doing, or the social work, or whatever. I felt like programming has a lot more to offer. I know in the past the images that I had from a programmer's life was, in a cave coding and not talking to anybody. It is maybe it was in the past. I'm not sure. That's the movies that I saw when I was younger that maybe gave me the impression that it was like that. But I can tell that it is very much different. It is a lot of teamwork. When you work as a programmer. And actually, I don't think programmer is still relevant. We're all analysts now. We're not just coding. We're doing recommendation on how it should be done, and we should, I think, always look to get better. So that's why I got hooked with the program world, I guess. Yes, what I like the most about the programming world is the fact that it's continuously evolving. I'm pretty sure it's not news to you, Guy. It's always evolving for the best. The communities are welcoming, and there's just many opportunities that gets open from a programmer's perspective. So it can be front end, back end, AI, machine learning, web development, mobile app, this and that. There's just so many opportunities. So I think that as soon as you discover that you like programming, there's many opportunities, and you should not close any doors before you at least try to feel what it's like. But yeah, that's what got me hooked here. Now I think you know enough of me, or maybe too much. I'm sorry. You don't have to know all of that. Hopefully, it's not going to be in your exam. Now, what is a CMS? I think it's self-explanatory with the word. It's a content management system. I think it says it all. A system that enable people to manage the content, easy as it is. Yeah, that's just what I think of when I hear CMS. Is I think about WordPress, because that was the first CMS I was working with in the past. Basically, you have some field, like in this case, a title that you can type in, and you don't have to wonder as a content editor or a marketer, you don't have to wonder what's happening behind the scene, right? I'm just creating content. That's where the CMS is very useful. Yeah, and now why would you use a CMS? There's many reasons to use a CMS, but some of those I think are more important to notice is now with a CMS, marketers or editors, anyone in between can easily manage content. It was not always like that before the CMS arrived. In the past, we were building static HTML website with, all the structure and the content was within the website itself. And so you were both the developer, both the marketers, both the content creators. So it wasn't very optimal. The other reason for CMS is now, like I said, programmers can now focus on functionalities. That's where we are the best at. That's where my work is more relevant. So we should focus on that. So in the web development perspective, the CMS played a big role on this part, making sure that the people with the right skill is doing the right things at the right moment, right? So having a developer doing some content management, some creating content is not very, is not wise for the money, for the wallet. So I think that's one big piece for the CMS. The other thing is we can make reusable components. I'm talking about templates, fields, layouts. I'm not sure if you guys know a little bit about that, but if you can think about let's say a press release page or maybe a about us page, something like that you see often. What is good is you probably see sliders in there. You can see some kind of a component that you can reuse from pages to pages. With CMS, it became very easier to handle that. I don't think it's very CMS related, the reusable components, because you can do that with just good code implementation. But the CMS played a role in how granular can it be reusable. So from a field perspective, let's say I have a single line text that I only accept a string within to render a title. Well, this single line text can be reused across many other components, and those components can be reused across pages, and pages can be reused across sites, right? So I think that's where the CMS has a big role to play, not necessarily at the component reusability, but more about the granularity of the reusability of the components, right? I think it makes sense in my head. I don't know if it makes sense for you. If it doesn't, let me know. Now, when I say when, but what I mean by that is when should I use CMS? When should I start thinking about using a CMS in my professional journey? You may be entrepreneur. Maybe you're going to have a website on your own. So how I see that happen, but obviously if you work for an agency, you don't decide the when, you're just applying whatever is being asked. So if the client needs this and that, you work that way. But more on a development cycle of a startup or maybe a blog or whatever, when should you think about using a CMS? I'd say that the first step is usually people are having a static website or managed website, maybe like Squarespace and technology like that, where basically you just create content, you don't have code. So you are, let's say, both dev and marketers, but most of the time you don't even have to dev whatever. It's just marketing related stuff. So you create content, you follow up closely, maybe with your Google Analytics services or something like that. But basically, you're maybe 1, 2, or 3 people in the creation of the website. After that, if you are getting bigger, or maybe you want to focus on functionality, something more custom, that's where the CMS comes handy, because the dev can now focus on development and marketers can focus on marketing stuff. But for that, you need marketers or a very good friend that can do that for you, or both. But in this case, if you want to, if you have a budget, or again, a good friend that can invest time in content creation, or you want to focus on that and you want to have someone else focus on the development. I think that as soon as you have the budget or the time to separate those contexts, that's where CMS should be coming up in your mind. You should be thinking about, now I want to make sure this functionality is better at this and that. I want to invest time on this, but I also want to create content to make sure that people recognize me. That's good. Those are hints that you're at a state where you should leave the managed or static website and go to a CMS. And what I'm going to talk later is the DXP. I think that's another step that can be thinking. You guys can be thinking about along the journey is, when should I use a DXP instead of a CMS? That's where you want to deliver personalized experience. That it comes with a bigger budget as well, because you start collecting, analyzing set of data. You're gonna use those set of data to deliver a more personalized experience to generate more income, more leads, more whatever things that marketer can benefit from, and transform that into money at the end of the day. But that's where you should be thinking of DXP. On my side, I will say that DXP is, I usually see DXP with bigger companies, because the more data you have, the more relevant it can be for you, the more personalized the experience can be, because you have enough data to make sure that it is relevant. If you don't have data, it's not very useful to have a DXP. It's going to be money in the garbage. But as soon as you have the potential to accumulate data and create a set of data and personalize and stuff like this, then DXP should be along your in your decision making, right? You should use it. Now, we're talking about CMS, we're talking about DXP, we're talking about a lot of stuff, but we have to talk about the digital experience, because I see it often, but when we talk about tools, when we talk about technology, we often forget the humans behind. And humans can be the one that develop it, but in this case can be the one that is going on your website. The digital experience, for me, I see it as what you need next. This is what can be the difference from one website to another one. Usually it's how the website knows me, right? Because if the website knows me, is going to be able to, give me the right path to the thing I'm looking for. It can be either by the search functionality or the UX design as well. I think it has a big role, but as a whole, the digital experience has a big role to play with a lot of, important thing along the journey. So if you want to keep your customer in, if you want the customer to come back to your website, it's all about the digital experience. It's like a Walmart, physical Walmart. If I go to a Walmart in Quebec City, and then I go to Walmart in, I don't know, in I'm not sure where, elsewhere in another country, another Walmart in US, for example. If I enter the Walmart, I am guessing right every time which alley is where, and applies for Costco and all big companies like that, because they know that the first experience I have within your building, your merchant or whatever, I assume as the first experience that I have should be the same in the second, the third one, and the fourth one. That's how we work as humans. So if I go to McDonald's first in Quebec, and then I go at McDonald's in Saskatoon, well, I'm expecting the same alley to get my food delivered. I'm expecting, kind of the same price, kind of the same menu, right? We're no exception in a digital world. So when people are coming to your website at first, they will remember that for a very long time. Can be good, can be bad, because if you offer a bad experience online, they are going to remember that for a while. And the other bad thing is they're going to share that experience to others. So you may lose, actual clients or customer, but you may lose as well potential customers as well. So digital experience plays a big role in this era. I would say, how important is the digital experience in 2021? Um, and by the way, I asked those questions. I was not sure if it would be a in-person event or not. So, but I know that you guys are not going to answer that right now. But the answer is pretty simple. On a scale of very important to so very much freaking important, I'd say it will likely going to be so very much freaking important, right? Uh, it's just because there's an unfair amount of competition, and because of that, there's a lot of recognition being being given to many competitors or companies, right? So if customers cannot recognize who you are, they will not find you, or it will be harder for them to find you. You're gonna have to put more money in the machine, like SEM, SEO, and stuff like this, to make sure people can find you because they don't recognize you, right? So, and then if you think about, that they already recognize competitors in place, there are big players out there. So you can think of Amazon, you can think of Netflix, Wayfair, right? They probably know stuff about you that your mother or best friend don't even know. So that's they can leverage that to make sure you stay on their website, or you think of them at first when you think about fast delivery and buying something online. Probably think of Amazon. They're there, they're recognized, and that's the kind of competitors that most of the people are facing or playing against today. So yeah, it is okay that the bar is high, and if you want to compete, the first step is to be aware of that. So that's okay. The second will be planning a, the second step will be planning a digital transformation with the right tools and the right people that can enable such. So we know that it is important to offer one of a kind digital experience in 2021, and it has to be, you know, at, we have to be at least close to the bar that was raised by the other competitors if you want to have part of the market, right? Depending on where the market, what markets you're playing in, but there's big players in every market almost, I would say now. And for years to come, competition will likely get stronger. Like Amazon won't stop innovating, and they won't stop succeeding. Like they are reaching success day after day. So we cannot say Amazon will die in a year or Google with this and that. We have to take those success for granted, and they're keeping innovation at a very good pace. So for the years to come, you have to be aware of that, and you cannot have something in place today that will be still working tomorrow. It's not how it works. For some people it's sad, but for others it's awesome opportunities. So company or digital products that enables any companies to get involved in the many giant own market will keep popping, right? So I'm thinking of SiteCore actually, and Cohesion, or products similar to that, product that help people that doesn't have the manpower to develop, this and that feature that can automatically do this and that. If you don't have the manpower, you don't have the resources to do that. If you can spend a little bit, some money on a monthly basis for a product that does it for you, I think that's the right path, and that this is something that is happening more often these days, and I think it's going to keep happening for the upcoming years. And at the same time, the products or the companies that did not invest enough time or dollars or people to transform their digital experience will continue to close doors, or at least lose a lot of their parts within their markets. That's for years to come, for sure. Now, with all that being said, what is a DXP, digital experience platform? What does it need in the winter, right? So what is a DXP? What can I do with that? How relevant it is for me or for my company? Well, it's a tool that provides superior customer experience, right? But for me, I'd say that a DXP is at least offering AI and personalization capabilities and a solution that can scale over time. Those are pillars that for me is needed for a proper DXP. So you know that today I'm going to talk about SiteCore, but there's other DXP on the market. But I do believe that SiteCore has a greater vision, and they have proven over time that they are going, I think, on the right path. They're not, they I'll talk about SiteCore later, but yeah. So for instance, we're not just fetching data to generate leads on Google Tag Manager, right? That's something we can do easily. Everybody does that. We should be able to deliver specific type of content that allows more conversion to a specific kind of users. Let's say if you're a developer and you go on my landing page, why would I show you a marketing related press release? You won't ever click on that. It's not relevant to you, and it won't be relevant to you today. It won't be relevant to you tomorrow. So, but what if I show a release note on the latest product release? As a developer, you might click on this, right? And from that very first step you did on my website, which is a DXP, the conversion journey has already started. So I can make sure that you are already on the good queue or the good path towards a conversion that can lead into more money in the bank, right? Because if I show you the right content, you should be able to get what you need as for information or whatever real quick. And I can also make sure that I do understand you. I know who you are, so I can give you the proper, and maybe email or whatever. I know who you are. I know what your interests are, so it's easier for me, for the marketing people, to have your attention and maybe sell you a product or invite you to an event and blah blah blah. So the very first step is this: knowing who is visiting my website is one, but we also have to make sure that it's seeing. I want him to stay on my website. That's where the DXP comes in place. What DXP is not, and I would say that it's not only for DXP, but for many other tools. I'll say that it is not magic. So artificial intelligence or machine learning or personalization, nothing of those is magic. It's not, there's always human behind that, right? So it's one thing to collect data, it's another to analyze it. And like, you cannot say, I have a company, it's not working for this and that, but hey, there's a tool that exists called SiteCore. I'm going to pay the license and bam, I'm going to win again. I'm going to be back on track. That's not a word. That's not how it works. It's a tool, right? So it's not, it's like people that want to jump in just because they feel the technology will fix their issues will fail. It's not going to fix their issue. It's going to help the people fix the issues. It is mandatory to understand that, and not for on the XP alone, but for many other technologies. So it's not because machine learning is trendy that using machine learning will help you realize what you need. You have to make sure you analyze and you use the proper method, you proper this, proper that, and make sure you follow up with, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's what DXP is not, and I'd say it's the same thing for other trendy technology that people try to use and make things happen. It's always human. There's always a human behind it. So yeah. Now, what is SiteCore? You know already that SiteCore is a digital experience platform, right? So for me, it's also a leading, for many, it's a leading digital experience software. It means that SiteCore enables company to deliver personalized digital experience. So SiteCore, like I said earlier, remember I told about how tools can enable companies to get on the market and challenge technology companies like Amazon and Netflix. SiteCore is one of them, because if I have a company that sells awesome product, I have to compete against Amazon, but Amazon has maybe 2,000, 3,000, whatever machine learning engineer that develop, personalization modules and stuff like this. If I have 20 engineers, is it possible or realistic for me to say I'm going to compete with Amazon? I don't think so. Maybe if you have the best 20 engineer in the world, even that, it's not possible, right? It doesn't make sense. They have the manpower, they have the money. But when SiteCore comes in, it says, all right, we have a platform, a DXP that will enable you to compete, because we have tools that enables that if you wanted to have such tools, you will have need, well, years of work with thousands of engineers. I'm offering you that for whatever price you're gonna pay for, but there's a price for sure. But it's less likely going to be as expensive as 2,000 engineers, right? It's not very close to that actually. It's more likely going to cost you one engineer as for the license, something like that. And Psycho will enables machine learning, personalization on your journey. It's gonna enables you to map data to a certain amount of personas, and you can actually create the personas. So you can create a persona for developer, marketers, people from that category, and those kind of categories are actually item in SiteCore that can be used to render different type of content based on that, right? So the other thing that you can do with SiteCore is machine learning behind the scene. It's fetching data, but it's also understanding the data and pushing it to the right places. And you can also use simple rules as well to make sure you offer the right content to people. So if I am in Quebec, don't show me the temperature from Ottawa, right? It's fairly simple. You can do this with other tools like Google, but SiteCore has all of those tools unified in one tool. So you can do a lot with only one and at the same place. So yeah, that's basically what SiteCore is. So that's the magic that happens behind the scene is you have many set of data. It can be database, it can be indexes, whatever it is. You have access to those data. SiteCore has its own databases called XDB, for instance, that will collect all of the experience data. We can think about experience data like Google Analytics data, but it basically enables us to have an anonymous customer or client, and on one click or two, transform this anonymous user to a persona and map this persona to whatever behavior I want to have. So the sooner you're not an anonymous person to me, the better it is, because I can give you the proper content, I can give you relevant information, I can sell you the right product that you need because I know who you are, right? So that's where SiteCore and DXP, but the job of a proper implementation of a SiteCore solution is we have to be able to very soon know who you are, so we can give you the content you're looking for. Can be blog article, can be emails, it can be product, can be whatever, but I need to know who you are, right? And I'm not telling that I need your name, it's not that, right? So SiteCore is also GDPR compliant if you need to. So it's not about that. It's more about behavior. What pages are you interested in? What is the activities you do, right? So there's many other tools that help such technology make better decision, because you know that Google Analytics is one, but you can also fetch data from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from Instagram, and with those kind of data, I can very quick know what are you guys interested in. Not knowing your name, your location, I don't need that, right, to sell you a Xbox, right? I just need to know you're a gamer. That's how I'm going to sell you an Xbox, not by knowing your name. That's how the magic happens behind the scenes. So we try to fetch as much as relevant data as possible, and use those data to do certain amount of mapping that can lead to personas. I'm saying a lot, but it can be a goals, a journey, whatever. But as soon as I have enough information, I should be able to personalize the experience and make sure you stay on my website and you start to recognize the website too. If I take the example from Netflix or Amazon, if I visit a website, I'm looking for I don't know, shoes. I'm looking for new shoes on a website. I like the shoes, but when I'm trying to add to my cart, the button is not working, or the checkout is giving me the wrong price, or when I do all of the processes to buy the product, and at the end it says, hey, I buy the product, and they call me, I don't have it in inventory. I'll say, what? you try to sell me something you don't have, I'll be, kind of pissed. And I will go back to Amazon where they are not failing me ever because they know the journey. You know, they know that if I go there, my experience will be awesome. It will be personalized. And if I buy shoes and they know I do skateboard, they will recommend me a skateboard. And based on what skateboard I bought in the past, they might be recommending me the good one. But actually they won't because skateboard is not very in their pipeline. But anyways, you get the example. And yeah, so whenever you have information, you create leads and optimize the journey of the customers. And that's just a screenshot of the dashboard of SiteCore. So you see that there's many applications that is offered by the product itself. We're not in a CMS anymore. It's not just, hey, if you want to do something else, you have to buy this plugin. You have to install this. You have to fetch a GitHub project. No, we have what you need here. You just have to enable this product. So do you have the person that can do this? Yes, well, you can start now. That's how it works. So you have the content editor, but you also have reports. You have a experience optimization. You have A/B testing tool. So from the features offered by SiteCore, to name a few. So you have this experience editor that is basically a WYSIWYG editor. You have the SiteCore AI, which is an automated personalization tool. By that, I mean how it works. Let's see a rendering as a hero banner, right? I could say enable auto personalization on this hero banner. And with that, it's going to see what persona is visiting the website, and it's going to take the right data source to present to this person. So the hero banner might have three images, right, to pick from. It's going to pick one of which, depending on the personas. And the auto personalization is going to tell the machine what image to present based on what he learns about, what he knows about the person visiting the website. So that's one click away from being personalized already from a banner perspective. There's marketing automation that, to be fairly transparent with you guys, I'm not using that much. It's more about me implementing it and the marketing people using it. But basically, I can have someone clicking on a forms, and as soon as he click on send email, I know what he's interested in. What he is interested in, I can on the spot, achieve goals, saying, "Hey, this has worked," and I'm gonna see what the percentage of of person that I got the click through on my forms. I can send another email. I can send data to my CRM. There's many things that can be automated for the marketers people as well. I have the SiteCore experience database also that I told you earlier, which is all the click, all the search, the behavior of my user is being fetched and stored in an experience database. I have the SiteCore experience accelerator called XXA. It's like a WYSIWYG editor, but component-wise, so we can use drag and drop components, and they are already, themed. So the color and everything, it's already there. I just have to now add my content. There's SiteCore GSS as well for headless development. That could be a talk on its own. I'm not going to jump on that, but if you ever are interested in headless development, that is actually pretty trendy, but for good reason. We can discuss about that if you want to later. SiteCore Forms, so a WYSIWYG editor for forms with out-of-the-box save action that are very powerful, and many more. Well, they're all listed on their website, but what we have to remember here is all the tool that you may need to personalize an experience is offered in SiteCore out of the box, and there's no more. By the way, when I'm doing WordPress reference, just know that I'm not working with WordPress for the past, I guess, 5 years, something like that. So maybe it has changed. But one thing I did not like from that in the past is it was very plugin oriented. So we had to install plugin this, plugin that to make this and that happen. We ended up with many plugins for simple usage, or contact forms plugin and this and that. And then it was becoming very painful to just manage the version compatibility, because I had like 20 plugins and a WordPress and a PHP version. I had to update this guy, the other will broke, so I had to update this and fix this and that. It was very hard to manage, as it could not be as flexible as I wanted it to be, but SiteCore is flexible because of that. Yeah. Now, well, just a quick overview, just a screenshot of what it looks like in SiteCore for the content management system part. So you have all of the nodes, the content node, the home page. You have you have fields like browser title, meta description that you see here. That's basic CMS stuff. So you have it here too. It's just that you also have the big machine behind that lets you personalize, optimize journey and do a lot more, right? All right, so guys, with this being said, I'm clutch actually, 45 minutes. So I was thinking about taking a break here. Yeah, okay, perfect. So I'm gonna start the other part of the session, and for this part, like I said, it was kind of hard for me to make sure that I'm not too technical and not enough technical, right? So I wasn't much myself. I'm not a DXP, so I don't know much about you guys. Not that I don't want to, but I just don't. So if it gets too technical or maybe too psycho related, just don't be shy. Ask question. I don't care if you open the mic and say, "Hey, stop here! You're going too fast," or whatever. I don't care. Just let me know. I want it to be relevant for you guys. I want it to be interesting. So if it's not, if it's trash, let me know. Right? We have to be aware of that, and don't be shy. Ask questions, say comments, raise your hands, open the mic, whatever. Let me know. Is it good? It's kind of funny because I never it felt like the gamer that streams on Twitch and stuff like this. I don't see the reaction, I don't hear stuff, but I take for granted that okay, yeah, perfect, awesome. So let's begin. I'm gonna start this with an incredible quote from Uncle Bob. Robert C. Martin, for those who don't know. I think it's my job to tell you that because it is very important to me. So I'm going to read it. Most managers want the truth even when they don't act like it. Most managers want good code even when they are obsessing about the schedule. They may defend the schedule and requirements with passion, but that's their job. It's your job to defend the code with equal passion. This quote is, I think, in the 21st page of Clean Code book, somewhere in there. But I I love this quote so much because it is the reality that we are in now, and I felt like it's kind of my job to tell you this quote, guys, because whatever your next job will be, can be agency, can be software, can be whatever, you will always feel some kind of a pressure of delivering something, right? And you'll be aware of this constant moving context. Like there's always this context that gives you, less ability to create, this awesome piece of code you were thinking of because you didn't have the time to code this or that. The reality is we're not always working with companies like Amazon that are quality delivering always. Right? You will work with some other companies too that we have clients, we have to deliver this and that, and the managers will ask you to deliver under a certain amount of maybe pressure or whatever, or time, or because time is money. But that's their job. Your job is to make sure that you're aware of the context, right? But you're aware that if you do this or that, they might lose more. That's why I said earlier, I think I said earlier, we're not just developer anymore. Maybe it was true in the past, but it's not true anymore. We're not programmers. We are analysts. We are developer. We are all of this together. How I see my job is not just coding line of code. That's something I do, but I review more code. I think I do analysis more than I code. We should never underestimate the time we spend analyzing, because it is going to save you more time and money to the business at the end of the day. It's very cheaper to analyze than it is to repair stuff, right? So as a analyst or developer or whatever the name the LinkedIn community is going to give you, your job will be to do recommendations, not only execute. If you want someone to execute, you should just buy an AI to do that for you. We are humans. We have more skills. We have more capabilities than a program does. So we should be paid for coding, right? But also for recommendations. Based on my recommendation and my understanding of this context, I think we should at least do this and that because of this and that. You should have this discussion with your managers. All right, so I feel like my job is done here. I had to tell it to everybody. It's done, checked. We can go next. So let's start with Helix and software architecture principles. If you give me a little second, yeah. So Helix and software architecture principle. I'm gonna define both, but I'm gonna define what is Helix after. I am going to showcase some software architecture principle that was followed by Helix that enables proper DXP implementation, because everything I said earlier about DXP maybe felt like simple. It kind of is simple, but again, it's a tool. So any humans behind a tool can do whatever he wants to. So as much flexible as it can be bad, it can be good because the human behind is the one taking decisions. So that's why the slide before is still very relevant. Make sure you do the recommendation, make sure you follow the good practice, and make sure you ask questions, right? So Helix and software architecture principles. What is Helix? Helix in the SiteCore world is a set of design principles and conventions for SiteCore development. So as a SiteCore developer, we should follow those principles as much as possible to enable scalability of a solution. So SiteCore has defined a set of design principles that it is being said, if you follow that, it will be easier for you to scale your solution, both vertically and horizontally. But if you don't follow those, it's kind of, you do some custom implementation and you're not following our guidelines, we may not support your implementation. So if you have issues with this and that, and we do realize at SiteCore that, hey, it's because you did not follow that, maybe we won't be able to help you, right? And I think it makes sense for both parties. So that's what SiteCore Helix is. It's a set of design principles and conventions for SiteCore development. Now, what SiteCore Helix is not, it is not a framework. So I don't know if you guys know like Node.js, maybe, if you have worked with some framework in the past, like you cannot do an npm install Helix, or for those who know Linux, you cannot do apt get Helix, whatever. It's not a package. It cannot be managed by package management. It's not a framework. It's not magic. Again, it's not strict rules that that cannot be adapted under certain contexts. Because, like I said previously, it's a set of design principles and conventions for SiteCore development. But the reality is, we all live under a certain amount of context, and it means that if you start working with SiteCore and an already in place solution, maybe because SiteCore has been there for I think a decade now, right? So maybe you have a solution that was, the foundation are not good, kind of shaky, kind of a Jenga game, right? So it kind of stays in place, but if you push too much a piece, maybe you're gonna fall apart. So you're kind of scared, and it's okay, it will happen. But in this case, you should just try to follow as much as possible the Helix principle, but do not break your solution to make it happen, because there's two different things between starting a solution fresh from like a vanilla SiteCore solution. Yes, all in on the Helix principle, follow this and that for sure. Likely not going to happen because, well, maybe, but it's more likely you're more likely going to work with an already in place solution that has some technical debt. That's the reality we are under. And that's the big differences, I think, between computer engineering and a building or bridge engineering, where they always start from scratch with a new house and stuff like this. On our side, I think Google said it well. They made an analogy of software development or engineering as a flight. So you have a flight ongoing, but you have to repair something on your flight, but you don't have the right to you know, I'm missing so many English words here, so it's kind of hard, but you don't want to have your flight going down to repair and then go again, because all of your customer will be, hey, no, I paid for this and that. Nowadays, people expect their website, their application to be up and running every second. And if it's not up and running, people are, you know, not crying, but almost. You see, when Facebook was down, people were all tweeting, hey, Facebook is down, haha, so bad. The reality is Facebook was up and running for the past decade. Not so bad. So it's a reality that we are under. So you will work with legacy code. You will work with solution that is kind of shaky. Those principles will help you take decision, but they are not going to be the decision making, right? SiteCore Helix goal. What's the goal behind SiteCore Helix principle? It is first to reduce dependencies. It is after that also to reduce dependencies, and then to reduce dependencies. So you get the point. SiteCore Helix goal is to reduce the dependencies. And that's not just SiteCore related, but a lot of, and I'm going to talk a little bit more of that after, but a lot of software principles that are in place for many products and for many years is all about eliminating dependencies, because you can dream of dependencies, but you can have nightmares too. I'm thinking about circular dependencies, and you know, the dependencies of this and that blocks you from upgrading this and that. That it can become a nightmare real quick. So the Psycholics convention that I'm going to show you later is all about reducing dependencies and making sure that we can scale our solution in a easiest way. How SiteCore Helix successfully reduced dependencies. It is first not reinventing the wheel. So the software principles that are being used behind Helix are already being used by many others, many tools, many technologies. It was tested for many years as well. So they're not saying I'm gonna invent a new principle, right? So the solid principle is still there. They're not reinventing it. They're just adapting, using, right? The other thing, yeah, so adapt and use software principle, like I just said, it does exist. It has been proven right for the past decade. I'm going to use it too for my context. And then it really tends towards modularity components. I'm going to talk about that too. Because let's say, for example, you guys have been playing with C#, so probably .NET. So you probably have project where you maybe have used LinkU or something like that. You probably have a using statement LinkU. When you do that, you use the component LinkU, and the behavior you have when you do that is, I'm going to have all I need with LinkU to apply my LinkU query. Because if I had to do using LinkU, and oh, it depends on this, I have to also, if I want to use LinkU, I also have to use this and this and that. Nobody will have used LinkU ever. So that's why, you know, we tend to use modularity components, and we tend to reduce dependencies, like I said previously. Another quote, now it's from SiteCore itself. Oops. The architecture pattern described by Helix is often referred to as component-based architecture or modular architecture. Again, nothing new here. I'm going to specify a little bit more, talk a little bit more about component-based architecture, but it's not Helix specific. It's a software principle. Now, just a quick note on content serialization. This one might be more technical. Let me, not technical, but I know it's very much CMS related. Let me know if it's okay. But serialization becomes very, very important in an Helix solution, and I would say in any CMS or DXP. I see that I have missed. Let me see if I have. Okay, no, perfect. So yeah, so it is very important because now with CMS, DXP, both of them, it can be Psycho, it can be WordPress. One thing that happened is we are creating a data structure that is stored in our database as an item, right? So I was talking earlier about the fields, the templates, the whatever layouts, right? Those are all data structure just like in your code, if you use a list of integer, that's a data structure, right? A string is a data structure. But in a CMS or DXP context, layouts, fields, and template are also data structure because it should not change over time, and it's there to hold certain amount of information in a certain state, right? So if I'm talking about a let's see like a single line text field, right? And it's called hero title, perhaps. We think that this kind of field should have only a string or numbers within, right? And the field itself should not change over time. Only the content should change. So the title, right? It can be school or I love school or I love psych or whatever. This content should be able to change over time easily. The field though is a single line text field, should not change. We should not be able to say, hey, today I decide that this field is going to be a date time field, because if I'm doing that, a lot of dependent content will break, probably depending on how it was managed in the backend, but it should break. So serialization comes handy for that matter in all of the CMS and DXP world for sure. And I have played with some serialization tool in many of those framework. But usually, if you have a field or a template and stuff like this, it's always an item created in the CMS and it's stored in the database. It means that if I want to have this data structure in another environment, for example, let's say I have a staging environment, a pre-production environment, and a production environment, I would have to at least create this data structure 3 times or create a package and install it 3 times. You can understand that real quick, it can be painful. And the bigger the companies, the more content you have to create, the more it's going to be harder to follow up with, and you open many doors to issues. The other thing is data structure should be version controlled. It should be in my source control, because it is a data structure. It is something very crucial to the well-being, the health of my solution. But how can I version control a item in my database? With serialization. Serialization tool depend on whatever framework you're using, but it becomes handy to transform a certain amount of item into a representation as code of the state of the data. So usually you see XML or YAML file, right? So you have nodes that says field this, title that, ID this, right? And it's always YAML and XML based. And then you have this file being version controlled. So now this is being checked. The other thing is, it means that when you deploy your code, it can be deployed across environment. It means that you don't have any more to create or install package from in each environment. You just have to deploy your code. And usually you have tools in your framework that will deserialize those YAML file or XML file into actual item and publish it in the database. So it is very crucial. You're gonna, if you ever work with CMS or DXP, you're gonna hear of serialization for sure. I hope it was kind of clear. I know maybe without the hands-on can be a little bit more complicated, but I really want to give you an overview of that because you're likely going to work with that one day if you have CMS or DXP. Now let's put an image on that. So I said data structure example, right? So let's see, you have 3 components, right? Components 1, components 2, component 3. Let's say those components are hero banners, for example. All those hero banners are on different page, right? But they have at least one thing in common. It's the field that you can see here is the X, right? The field is hero banner title, for example. That's only the field that is being shared across those components, and those components handle the value, the content themselves, but they are sharing the same field. It means that what you should be able to read here, like 3 components depend on X, which is the field here, then X has 3 good reasons not to change. Easy as it is. I'm showing that because later I'm going to showcase another example based on an actual software principle, and you're going to see why SiteCore work this way, right? Sorry. So imagine X is a hero title. If I change the field for date time, it means that my 3 components will be breaking. Maybe I have 100 though. Maybe I have 1,000. So there's 1,000 good reasons not to change X. That's why serialization is very, very useful and important. Now, in the SiteCore world, we have layers. Layers are defined to enable modularity, but also eliminate dependencies, or at least make a clear statement on how the dependencies work in my solution. So we have project, feature, and foundation layers. The project layer provides the context of the solution. It's the layer that brings together the concrete graphical designs of the solution, right? It's like, let's see all the blocks pieces together, making a page on the website. That will be the project layer. That's layout. It means that this layer is very unstable because it depends on the feature and the foundation, because the project is built with feature and feature is built with foundation, most likely. And then you have the feature layer that contains the concrete features of a solution as understood by the business owner or the editors or the marketers, whatever. Like previously, the previous example, the hero banner, for example, could be a feature, should be a feature. So that will be a block called hero banner. That's a feature, and this block can be used in a layer to create a whole page on the project side, right? And this feature should never depend on another feature. It will create possibly a circular dependencies. It means that if I have a feature depending on another feature, and this feature and another feature, and this feature is also depending on the very first feature, we have an acyclic circular dependencies, which break the acyclic dependencies rule, but it will be bad. So you don't want that. So feature never depend on a feature. Then you have the foundation. The foundation layer is the lowest layer in the Helix structure. As the name suggests, it is the foundation of the solution, right? So when a change occurs in this layer, many features or pages will be affected because they all can depend on this guy. It means that the foundation layer should be the most stable layer of the solution. So we can think of the foundation as a shareable logic across features. So let's say maybe both the footer and the hero banner needs to have some personalized note to say hello to the logged in user, right? In which you need to fetch the data from whatever database or whatever. And for that, you will likely want to reuse the same method or logic. And this is where you're going to put it in the foundation. So the hero banner feature and the footer feature are going to use the foundation layer that will be the logic for fetching the data in the database to say hello to whatever people, right? That's a dumb example, but yeah, just to showcase the point. Now, again, the same image. You have 3 features that depends on the foundation. Your foundation layer has to be more stable because it has now at least 3 good reasons not to change, right? So it's similar to the previous, component here with the field. It's applied here for the feature and foundation too. So you see that the dependencies always goes in the same direction. So it goes in a direction where the less stable can depend on the most stable, right? And I think I have another note on that, but should be somewhere. Let's see. Anyways, yeah, I have it later on. I have a note on stability as well. Now, some concept that you guys might want to know. Each feature must comply with the common closure principle, the CCP, that you probably have heard of in the past. I'm going to talk about it later as well. Classes that change together are packaged together. That's another component principle that I'm going to talk about later too in a minute. But basically, like I said earlier with the link queue package, if I have to do a using link queue with 3 other using statement, will not make sense. I should be able to use what I need on the spot with the one package needed. If I have to do many using statement, it doesn't make sense. Whenever possible, use information that does not change over time to fetch data. So sometimes people trying to fetch data based on an item name or title and stuff like this. It may change over time, so your code may break. Use the GUID, use the ID, for instance. ORM is playing big role in there too. If a feature depends on a feature, like I said earlier, the problem is not in the code. And if you don't have a problem yet, it will come. Trust me, it will come. And usually, foundations are abstract functionalities shared through features or specific business logic, extensions of different implementation of technologies or modules. Just a big sentence that says foundations are usually logic or method that can be shared across features. So you don't have to duplicate code to apply the same kind of behavior. Now, I wanted to say, who is Uncle Bob? I've talked about him, I think, 2 or 3 times since the beginning. Uncle Bob is the friendly name we give to Robert C. Martin that you guys probably know of, or maybe not yet, but he's a software developer, he's an instructor, he's a best-selling author, but I am interested in 2 of his book, actually, and 2 of those books, I'm using a lot of those references in this session. So he's the author of Clean Code that you probably heard of in the past, and Clean Architecture that you may have heard in the past too. I will highly recommend those 2 books, by the way, but whatever. So that's Uncle Bob, and I'm using a lot of reference from the Clean Code and Clean Architecture book. That's why I wanted to specify who is this guy. Now, I told you earlier, I'm gonna define you guys what is a component, because we say SiteCore Helix is a component-based structure, right? It's component-based logic. So what is a component? Component is a unit of deployment. That's how we should see it. It's a unit of deployment. So if I have a component, it should be deployable alone, and then should be able to reuse that elsewhere, just like my good friend LinkQ that I use for many examples. So some concept. Regardless of how they are eventually deployed, well-designed components always retain the ability to be independently deployable and therefore independently developable. It means that if I have a component, I should be able to deploy these components alone if I need to, right? So at Microsoft, if the update LinkQ package, they don't have to deploy the whole, their whole .NET universe. They just redeploy the LinkQ package with a new version numbers, and I can, fetch it in a new Get repository if I want to. But the main idea here is I can develop and deploy a component independently of the others. And that's also, that rhymes with the other thing I said, like LinkQ should be usable alone without other dependencies, because, if there's other dependencies, should be within the project, the component. In .NET or in the SiteCore context, we could think of a component as a DLL, for example. You guys know what is a DLL? I know many of you guys said work with C#, so DLL is just the compiled code that the compiler gives us. With SiteCore, we use Roslyn compiler, but there's other compiler. But at the end of the day, it's the compiled code, the DLL, and the DLL is usually the one file we deploy as a component. So if you have a big solution, you compile it, you're gonna have a DLL. Depending of the structure, you might have 1, 2, 3, but all of the DLL should be component-wise. So one DLL should not depend on the others. If it does, it should be merged together. Also allows you to share features across different projects. Again, if I'm taking LinkQ, for example, I can use LinkQ in any other project. That's how components work. And we should think the same way in a SiteCore architecture. If I'm developing a feature, I should be able to use the feature elsewhere too. Not always possible, because there's, the version compatibility and this and that, but under a similar context, we should be able to use the same component. Now, that's the quote I was looking for earlier, because like I said, in every technology, in every framework, there's a human behind it. So just as it is possible to create a substantial mess with the well-made bricks for a house, for example, so it is also possible to create a system-wide mess with well-designed mid-level components. It means that even if I have well-designed, well-coded, awesome components, it is still going to be used by someone else that may not follow good practices. It may create something, a wrapper around it and break it anyway. So it doesn't mean that if you have well-designed components that you're going to have a well-designed system. There's always human behind that. So we have to be aware of that. There's no such thing as magic here. Now I'm going to talk about some component principles where it's going to be, I'm going to do the bridge between software principles that you guys probably have heard of or hear, just a little bit, maybe not, but you're going to see. Yeah, so I'm going to do the bridge between Helix principles and commonly known software principles. Let's start with component cohesion. When you ask yourself which class belong to which components, that's where component cohesion kicks in. And I'm going to talk about the reuse release equivalence principle, the common closure principle, and the common reuse principle. Those three software principles are being used for the common cohesion, component cohesion, and it's also being used by the Helix, SiteCore Helix principles. Like I said earlier, we're not reinventing the wheels. We are reusing principles and adapting under our context. In this case, we're using the component cohesion. So let's start with the reuse release equivalence principle. This principle is saying that releases are associated with a version. You probably saw that many times. I will say if you have worked with NuGet package in .NET framework or PHP, I'm not sure if you have worked with similar, but you have plugins version, you have or language version itself, right? So when I release a new version, it's also being there's also a version numbers associated to that. That way I can make sure that what version number is can use what version number, right? So for the compatibility, did I say it right? Compatibility, I guess, or close. What I mean is with different version, you have to know what version work with what version. That's why we say releases are associated with a version. Then we can map what compatibility is with what version of what tools or modules. Also, the classes and modules that are grouped together must be released together. I think I said it often, and I took LinkQ, for example, many times, but they could be any other example like regex or whatever. So whatever class, module or component that I want to use, everything that needs to be together to make it work should be grouped together. It should be released together as well. That's why if I'm using LinkQ, I'm hoping that if I'm using LinkQ, I have everything I need to make it happen. If I cannot query like first or default because I'm missing another package, it doesn't make sense at all. So it's this principle is about grouping what needs to be together, right? You want dependencies alone, not trying to understand which depends on what. I have this guy, this version, and it can do what you want to do and under a certain amount of compatibility, version. But now I say, hey, but it's more Psycho related, but hey, are we going to deploy every feature and foundation alone in a Psycho solution? You don't have the visual yet, but in SiteCore, you often end up with, I don't know, 100 feature and 40 foundation. Am I going to version 100 repository and 40 repository and deploy them independently? No, it will be too much of work, and it will ask for too much, resources. So we're not. But I'm gonna showcase why we're not later. Now there's the common closure principle. The common closure principle, I think you probably have heard of in the past, or maybe you have heard about single responsibility principle. So this one is classes that change for the same reason or under the same condition at the same time must form a component. And personally, I think it kind of goes with that a little bit, but it means that if I'm creating classes and method and I realize that under a certain condition, those two classes needs to be updated. They need to change because of this and that. It's a good hint that those two classes should be grouped together as in a whole component. The other like hint that I'm giving or trick is the common closure principle is, the component version of the single responsibility principle. Kinda like the single responsibility principle says that a method should do one thing, should do it great, and should do only that, right? But a component wide will be if I need those things to make this behavior happen, well, those two things should be together. And also, if those two or three things has to change under a certain condition, it means that they're closely related and therefore should be a component. That's what it says. And now we have the common reuse principle. Do not force a user or a customer to use components if they do not need them. And this is so important for me, and not just for the common reuse principle in a component, context. I think that this principle is so useful because sometimes you see people adding many methods, many classes in, let's say when I see a class called helper in a project, that's where I'm kind of scary because helper is like, hey, if you don't know what to do with it, put it here. And now if I use a helper class, I have 100 methods that are useless for my context, but I have to use it. I have to include it in my code because it has been grouped together. That's the opposite of what we said earlier. Like what has to be together should be grouped together. But now here, if it doesn't need to be together, do not put it together. It's gonna be, heavier. It's gonna take more disk space for nothing, and it can be confusing. If I don't need that to make something happen, don't force me to use it. If it makes sense. Now, classes and modules that tend to be used together should possibly be a component, and that's also what I said a little bit earlier, or similar to. But if you see more often than the other way, two components being always used together, chances are it's one component. You should group those as one. Now, there's a stretch diagram that I took from Clean Architecture that says you cannot have those three principles working 100% without, having one of these being a little bit stretched out, meaning I cannot use the full potential of all of the three. I can use the full potential of the two and some of one because they're all kind of dependent together. So there's a vision of trying to use all of them, but there's a reality that because of the nature of the principles, there's always at least one that's going to suffer from the implementation of the two others. So here the REP is the reuse release equivalence principle. The CCP is the common closure principle, and CRP the common reuse principle. In SiteCore Helix context, the way we pay the price is for the REP, the reuse release equivalence principle, because we want to be so much close to the common closure and common reuse principle that is very component centric, that for that matter, we're getting away from the reuse release equivalence principle. So we are using those two, and at the price of the reuse equivalence principle. That's why I said earlier, you remember this note, are we deploying all features alone? No, we're not. But we are very close to those two principles. That's why we are ready to pay the price. So I'm deploying my whole SiteCore solution as one. It's going to have its own version number, but I'm not going to give version number to all my features and foundation. So that's the price I'm paying. I'm ready to pay this price to have a common closure and a common reuse principle applied at almost 100% when following the Helix principle closely. If it makes sense. And by the way, don't be shy if you have questions. Oh, I see. Do I have questions? I missed those. Okay, no, perfect. If you have questions, don't be shy. Now, component coupling. We're going to talk about the acyclic dependencies. I think I've talked about it earlier, just kind of. I'm going to talk about the stable dependencies and the stable abstraction. The component coupling is coming hot when we talk about dependencies. And you remember I told you that the SiteCore Helix principle goal is to remove remove most of the dependencies that are not needed and to clarify the direction of the dependencies. And that's the principle that are being used to make this happen. So let's start with acyclic dependencies. It says that the direction of dependencies is unidirectional. And if I can jump in what I said earlier, the direction is project to feature, feature to foundation, right? Then we have the creation of unit of work, which can be releasable. That's what we said also with component. So that turns out to be hand in hand with acyclic dependencies principle, and also protect the solution from a possible circular reference. Because if we have a unidirectional reference pattern, it means that we cannot ever have a I have problem talking English. There's we're less likely going to have cyclic circular dependencies by using this principle. The other thing that we used to call morning after syndrome, if you follow this, unidirectional direction of dependencies, you're less likely going to have something breaking the day after you developed it because someone else developed something that broke it. That's the morning after syndrome. Hey, it was working yesterday. It's not this morning. I've just merged something. Why it's not? It's because you probably have some dependency somewhere, somehow that is not unidirectional. And when you follow a cyclic dependency principle, you remove a lot of those possibilities. The stable dependencies principle. It says that if a component X is expected not to be stable, component Y should not depend on it. In SiteCore Helix, it means that if the features is not stable, the foundation that is stable should not depend on the feature, which is applied with the Helix principle. Now, if a component X is difficult to change due to its stability, here we're talking about foundation, that component X should not depend on an unstable component. So foundation layer, that is where we store the logic mostly, reusable logic. If it's stable, it should not depend on an unstable feature that may change over time a lot, like error rendering, right, or whatever. So that way we know that it's always, unidirectional for a matter of stability, and also that the other way is not happening. It's unidirectional in one way, so the unstable from the stable, right? And now you remember the little image that I showed you before. Now here it is again, the stable dependencies principle in a nutshell. That's what you saw earlier twice, and that's the stable dependencies principle. Three components that depends on X has three good reasons not to change. So this software principle is exactly as is applied into the SiteCore Helix principles guidelines. But now, not everything can be stable, because if it was the case, we will have in our hands a stable solution, but we could not change it, over time. It will not be scalable. It just will be stable. So we have to find, the sweet spot between scalability and stability. That's why we are, playing with the foundation being very stable. It doesn't mean that we don't change foundation over time. It means that if you have to change it, you have to be aware that what will be the impact. But also, knowing that foundation are hard to change, how could we make it easier for us to change it? I'm going to show it later, but basically, the more stable you are as a component or layer, the more abstract you should be, because you don't want to modify something stable, you want to extend something stable. You probably heard of that in OOP classes that you have. So polymorphism and stuff like this. Polymorphism, I said it in French, but polymorphism, it says that if you have something stable, you don't want to play in it and break it. You want to extend it. So that's how we should be thinking when developing foundation layer in SiteCore. Now, stable abstract principle, a component should be as abstract as it is stable, just like what I said. So, yeah. I'm I will be done with the technical side of software principle in a SiteCore context, SiteCore Helix principle context. I'm gonna give you just some input on the SiteCore's vision, and that will be aligned with why I like SiteCore, why I'm using SiteCore, and I'm gonna be a SiteCore developer for a while at least. It's always been the vision. It's not like if you go with SiteCore 6 or 7, they did not have the Helix principle in place. SiteCore Helix principle only arrived in the SiteCore 8 version. But that's where you understand that they know how to get better. They know how to do wise choice, and they're there for the consumers, either the developer or marketers or the customers. So I said that I think the fact that they are community and customer centric is one reason to follow them. So, for example, for the past year, so around Cycle 9, there was a big trend about going headless with the CMSs, and there were also a big trend for past couple of years with CMSs being run in a Docker environment. One blocker we had with SiteCore 8, 9 is the dependencies that we have with Windows container. SiteCore 10 now support .NET Core, and they're officially supporting and also giving their own images for Docker. So we can now use Docker and Kubernetes for our infrastructure, which is very awesome for the blue-green deployment and also the horizontal and vertical scalability. So very, very happy about that. And that was asked by the community for the past years or two or three, and the community did some open source project to enable some Docker deployment, but SiteCore was there listening, hearing, and they made their own project to officially support SiteCore on Docker and communities and even more. Really loved it. They have also so for the past couple of years since SiteCore 8, most of the people are using app services in Azure to deploy in the cloud SiteCore, and then when SiteCore announced that they will be officially supporting Docker and Kubernetes, they gave a hand date of support for app services, but then the community were kind of stressed out and asked for more, and they offer more support for the app services. So that's again how they are listening to us, and they also have an MVP program, most valuable partners or whatever player program. So they recognize your what you do for the communities. They recognize what you do for the clients and everything in between. So if you do enough, or if you are being recognized, they are going to give you an MVP status that comes with certification, some privilege as of knowing the release before the others and stuff like this. And they also support the customer a lot. So they have a customer success agent on every implementation. They have a support platform where you can open tickets and this and that. They really want to make sure that what you're doing with the platform is okay, that you're in good hands, and that your clients are happy with what they have in their hands too. Also, their recent acquisition tells a lot on where they want to go. They bought 4 companies in the past year. Over $1 billion budget was been given in their latest. How to say that? Well, they raise funds, I guess. I'm not sure how to say that, but yeah, they receive $1 billion, and they because the people that trust SiteCore, they know where they can go, and they gave money. And now they bought Reflection Company, Moosent, Box Ever, and 451. Those acquisition is because things that we do with SiteCore, we always want to do it in SiteCore. Like I said, we don't want to be dependent on a plugin, but for some part of our application, we sometimes had to, and that's where SiteCore decided that for this and that, we are going to buy people that are already in the market. We are going to implement those solutions within ours, so we don't have to be plugin dependent as well. So Reflection, for example, is very commerce related. SiteCore Commerce was released, I think, a year or 2 years ago, and they are going to in the market with big tools. I'll say but yeah. So they bought Reflection to make sure we can have personalized search experience that convert shoppers into buyers. Like I told earlier, you know that people don't want to buy something you don't have in store and stuff like this. And all of those functionality is asking for some development when you do, even if you buy a plugin or whatever, it's asking for some development. SiteCore decided to step in and say, we are going to tackle this challenge. They bought this product and they are going to make it available in the SiteCore universe. It's going to be very easier and a scalable solution as well. Moosen is more related to the email campaign, a little bit like MailChimp, I'd say. So they have in the past, they still have an email tool, SiteCore email marketing that can be used, but there were some limitation. And by adding Moosen to their stack, those limitations will disappear. The Bucks Ever acquisition is regarding the CDP, so Customer Data Platform. It's just that it can optimize the testing and the journey of the customer by building a long-lasting, trusted customer relationship with the Bucks Ever. So it means we have more data and more ways to understand the data to make sure that we offer the great content. So it's just getting better at personalizing the experience. And then the acquisition of 451, it's an experience first headless commerce solution. So I've told you that SiteCore has a GSS solution for the past couple of years that enables headless solution. And now with 451, it's also enabling the headless solution, but in a commerce context. So I think they are going in the right path. That's why I'm sticking with them. And that's why I think you should be curious about SiteCore and follow them closely, because they're not stopping. Just like Amazon, they are keeping innovation on their top of their heads, and they are listening to the community, to the customers, and they are acting accordingly. That will be it for me. It was a little bit longer. Sorry for that, but I am available for questions, discussion, whatever you guys want to discuss about. I am here. I don't have to leave in 2 minutes. I don't know if you guys have to, but right now I am available for any question you may have, if there is, right? Did you like the presentation? Something you didn't like? Any comments is well appreciated. You don't have to be shy.
Yeah, the presentation was very good. It's something that I didn't have an idea on before. So I think, especially the reference with the book Clean Code, it's something that I wanted to read for a very long time, but I think it's something that I would invest on right now. So if anyone has a question, please do ask your question. Your mics, you can open your mic and just ask your questions, or you can just type it on the chat. We still have some time. So thank you so much, Jean, for the awesome presentation as well.
Thank you, guys. Well, thanks to everyone that was here with us. And yeah, I'm just hopeful that you guys liked it. And the very best I think I could have done here is that at least you've learned something that may help you in the future. That's what I'm hoping for. If you want to connect with me, guys, as well, we can connect. I think I have a slide on that too. I just didn't share it. But yeah, if you want to connect, don't be shy. I have a little blog on the web as well, where I have my social media channels, so LinkedIn or Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow. But you can hook me up there. Yeah, don't be shy. I'm always happy to have discussion with anybody that will need. If you need guidance, you're curious about something, give me a text, give me whatever. I'm always there answering people. We also have a Slack community with SiteCore where I also talk with people. And so if people have SiteCore question, I try to be there for the people. So yeah, that will be it. I'm happy that you guys like the presentation. I was scared about being too technical or not enough and about the time I had. But if you liked it, I'm very, very happy. and hopefully you learn something, and something that will help you in your journey in the future.
Yeah, I think most importantly, the fact that we just code, sometimes we don't think about how the implication of maybe how we put them, how we might package them or separate them. So I think it's a good knowledge to understand that we need to, when we start working, we need to be careful on how, the structure and how to package them. So
Yes.
For so many students, I think it's something that we've not really paid attention to. So I think this was a very good eye opener for me. I don't know about anyone else.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's very important, like you said, and I think there's two things for me that I take very personal. The first is I am very proud of my code. I tend to be, I consider my code like art, because I know at some point people are gonna read my code and maybe judge me or whatever. But at some point we don't have to care about who's judging who. But I tend to be proud of my code, so I'm trying to stay, in line with what is the actual good practices, but we have to be aware that it's changing over time. Technology is updating as well. We have new version of this and that, but what has been proven for the past, many years, I think should be, relevant enough for us to follow. And the other thing on that is always, never underestimate the time you're not coding. I said it earlier, I'm going to repeat it. It's one thing to start coding real fast, but it's another to know which path you're taking first. Because what's this? Well, I would say that it's like it's better to go slowly in the right direction than faster in the wrong direction, right? This applies with coding too. I tend to force myself not to code at first when I have a user story. I force myself, even if I think I know the path, I'm trying to force myself to not meditate, but just making sure, double checking that I'm going the good way or the best way. And then there's also this big monster called context, right? So even if I want to take the best path that I think is the best, maybe it cannot happen because of budget, because of time, because of delivery issues and this and that. So the context is something that will change your plan forever, and it's okay. But the more tool you have, the better you get at understanding, the context, understanding the different path that is offered to you, what are the pros and cons from each, the better and the easier it will be to consider those things, I believe. But again, our job is not just to code, I think, is to give the recommendation and to code, because there's always more than a path that can be chosen for delivering whatever. And the managers has to know them. In my case, I'm the manager, but there's other people. But the managers has to know the many paths and the reason for this and that. And this is your job, guys, to make sure that you defend your code with equal passion. Like I said earlier from Uncle Bob, it's not true that we're just coding anymore. We're developer that give recommendation. That's what I believe in.
Yeah, that's true. I think we should be wearing different hats when we're programming and coding.
Yeah.
So that's a good takeaway from today. So if you have any question, guys, you can always message Mr. Jean. And if you really want to know more, you can always send him an email so he can show it, direct you to the path to your questions, should in case you have further questions. So just to remind everyone that we have our next workshop by 1, and it's going to be something very interesting. So if you can all try to be there, it's on Linux networking services, and it's going to be Dr. Adelhak Fano who will be the one to be presenting. So I can't wait for that as well. So in the absence of any questions, I would just say thank you all for coming, and thank you, Mr. Jean, for an awesome presentation and insight into so many things that we really don't pay attention to. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks to you guys. Really appreciate that. I hope you have a very good day and an awesome lunch.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Lunch is very important.
It is. So
Yeah,
in case you love SiteCore, by the way, and you're curious, like I said, I'm the organizer of 2 SiteCore user group, and there's a session I'm holding remotely with an awesome technical guy next week and it will be remote. If you're interested, I'm gonna share the link somewhere, somehow. I guess I'm gonna share with the organization here so if you're curious about it, you could come and join us.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure, you can share the link here, or you send it to Miss Nariman, and she will be able to send to every one of us, or we'll find a way to post it on our website as well. So
Okay.
Miss Nariman would be the best, but you can also share the link on the chat as well.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna share the link here in the chat. So yeah, enjoy. I'm not continue. I'm gonna let you go, guys. Go eat and enjoy the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.